SEP FanFic Readings presents Thanks to the Photographs by Unstable Hufflepuff. Chapter 23. Tea with the Malfoys. Hermione, for the first time in her life, framed a photograph that had been taken by a reporter for the Daily Prophet. The headline it had been paired with had been so much less appealing, but she had plenty of photographs of other important people in her life, and she needed one of Draco too. It now sat proudly on her bedside table. Every morning when she woke up and every night when she went to sleep, she would be greeted by an image of the two of them kissing on the snow-covered front steps of Gringotts Bank. Directly underneath the article, headlined, "Hermione Granger Seals the Deal. Are the Malfoys in Trouble?" had been another, much more amusing headline. WWN host mocks WWW co-owner Ron Weasley. Needless to say, the day was off to a great start, which could only mean that something was going to ruin it. The first sign of trouble had come while Hermione and Draco were still lying in her bed, having decided to enjoy a lazy Saturday morning. They were waiting on Creature to deliver them breakfast when they heard his croaky voice from the main room of Hermione's quarters. "Oh, Mistress Sissy, how Creature has missed you!" Both Hermione and Draco sat right up and promptly froze in horror. "My goodness, Creature," said a cool voice that could only be Narcissa Malfoy. "I was not informed that you had taken up post here at Hogwarts." "Master Harry has no need for a house elf. He told Creature. Creature is happy to serve the students and staff at Hogwarts School. Master Harry sends Creature a gift each Christmas." "How kind." "Oh, yes, Mistress Sissy. Creature is very grateful for all that Master Harry has done for Creature, and for brave Master Regulus, too." "Is that so?" "Creature, would you be so kind as to take us to our son?" said a cold, drawling voice. Hermione and Draco shared a terrified look, for it was the voice of Lucius Malfoy. Hermione wondered how he and Narcissa could have possibly gotten into her living quarters. "They're probably having just a bit of a lie-in," said a new voice dismissively. "Oh, Veronica," Hermione thought miserably. "In that case, we will wait," said Lucius. There were footsteps accompanied by the ominous thud, thud of his walking stick. "Creature, do let our son know that we are here and that he should come out to greet us." There was a small pause, and then he added, "On second thought, let them both know." "But Creature has not served Miss Hermione and Master Draco their breakfast." "Now, Creature," said Narcissa impatiently. "Of course, Mistress Sissy. Creature will tell them." Not a moment later did Creature appear at the foot of Hermione's bed with a pop. He regarded them both warily. "Master Draco's parents have come to see him. They request both his and Miss Hermione's presence in the main room." Draco, in his horror, seemed incapable of speech, so Hermione said, "Thank you, Creature. We'll be out in a moment. Would you mind leaving our breakfast on the table?" "Of course, Miss Hermione." With a bow and another pop, he was gone. "Fuck," muttered Draco, leaping out of his bed and scrambling to gather his clothes. "Fuck, fuck, fuck." It'll be okay," said Hermione shakily, though she scarcely believed her words. She got out of bed to put on her own clothes, then took the time to make sure neither of them looked too disheveled. She fixed her hair as Draco dashed into the ensuite to do the same. Hermione then joined them at the sink, and they hurriedly brushed their teeth, fighting for room in front of the faucet. 1 minute later, they stood in front of the door, Hermione's hand on the doorknob, and Draco's taking deep, calming breaths beside her. She waited, and at his nod, opened the door. Lucius and Narcissa sat together on the sofa, both dressed in their everyday finery, and sipping the tea that had been brought up with Draco and Hermione's breakfast. Veronica stood near the entrance, casting them an apologetic look. The only available seating that would allow them to face Lucius and Narcissa was the ottoman, meaning that they would not be able to recline and would be on edge for the entire encounter. Upon realizing this was likely the reason behind Lucius and Narcissa's seating arrangement, Hermione walked straight past them to the table and sat down to eat her breakfast. "You can leave now, Miss Smith," Lucius said coldly. "Your presence is no longer required." "I'm sorry," Veronica mouthed frantically, backing out of the room. Draco glared at her until she was gone. "Do not be angry with your friend, Draco," said Narcissa, gesturing for him to sit. She was not the one to let us in. That was Creature. She merely led the way. Draco considered the ottoman for a moment before he joined Hermione at the table. Narcissa sniffed irritably. So your plan is to ignore us, then? He said nothing. No doubt your lapse in judgment is a result of this troublesome dalliance. We do not appreciate the negative influence you have had on our son's life, Miss Granger. I'm sorry to hear that, Mr. Malfoy, said Hermione, calmer than she felt. She drew her wand and transfigured 2 napkins into teacups before pouring both Draco and herself some tea. Though I hear a change of heart is near impossible at your age, so I shall not attempt to sway your opinion. Her words went ignored. We received some interesting news last night, Lucius said, his voice only growing colder. Your inheritance was removed from the family vault, as was your grandmother's ring. Would you care to explain that, Draco? Draco shook his head, taking a sip of his tea with a slight tremble in his hands. I take it you will not be joining us at the manor for Christmas. No, he said, picking out a crumpet and beginning to lather it with jam. He did not look at his parents. Hermione and I will be spending Christmas with Aunt Andy and her grandson. Narcissa gasped. Is it your intention to get a rise out of us? Asked Lucius dangerously. I'm only telling you the truth, Father. It's not my fault if that happens to upset you. Draco took a bite of his crumpet and moaned in delight. This is really rather good. What sort of jam is this? Hermione checked the label on the jar. Raspberry. Delicious. Is it? Here, try some. Draco extended his arm across the table, holding his crumpet out to her, and Hermione took a bite. What's the verdict? You're right, she said, nodding appreciatively. She licked her lips. It's good. Are you quite done? Oh, sorry, Father. I forgot you were still here. Lucius downright growled. It's rather warm in here, said Hermione abruptly. She fanned herself with her hand for a moment, then rolled her sleeves up to her elbows, revealing the scar on her forearm. Much better. That is enough, Narcissa snapped. She set her tea down on the coffee table and stormed over, looking outraged. It was quite possibly the most emotion Hermione had ever seen her display. What are you doing, Draco? This is not you. This is not the son I raised. Draco rolled his own sleeves up, showing her the dark mark still on his forearm. No, he said darkly. This is. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Narcissa tore her eyes away from his arm and attempted to gather herself. When she next spoke, her voice was much calmer. If you wish to rehash past arguments, you will do so at another time, when we don't have company. Now. Hermione and I have no secrets, Mother. There's nothing I would not say in front of her. Even so, said Narcissa, you cannot truly believe that this is good for you, that it is in any way acceptable. You have a duty to your family. Is she pregnant? Demanded Lucius suddenly, walking over himself, leaning heavily on his walking stick. Is that why you've done this? Draco gaped at him. Not that it is any of your business, Mr. Malfoy, said Hermione indignantly, but I am on a monthly contraceptive potion, so no, she is not pregnant. Lucius glared at her for a moment before turning back to Draco. First, you divorce Astoria. A wonderful girl from a good family, interjected Narcissa. And then you abandon your responsibilities at the manor. To do what? Teach? I happen to enjoy teaching. Draco, be serious. You are above this work. You are above this. Lucius glanced at Hermione. Behavior. Your father is right, Draco. This is unacceptable. You know what happened to my sister. I'd have thought you knew better than to betray your family like this. Draco scoffed. You are a Malfoy, exclaimed Lucius. That means something in this world, yet you have gone out of your way to embarrass us at every turn. This has nothing to do with you, Draco snapped, getting to his feet. He gave Lucius a menacing look. This is about me finally taking control of my life. Oh, yes, well done, said Lucius mockingly, clapping his hands together. You must be so proud of yourself. As a matter of fact, I am. Draco, please, be reasonable, said Narcissa, a hint of desperation in her voice. Even if we were to ignore the status of her blood, which we will not. She is not the sort of witch you should be taking an interest in. Let us find you someone else. Please, Draco. Mother, you will not turn your back on us. You will not turn your back on everything we have ever taught you for some mudblood whore. Hermione sat very still. She felt her face heat up, but fought to keep herself from reacting. This was Draco's fight. Draco, whose expression had turned impossibly dark. Do not, he said in a low voice, stepping closer to Lucius, so that Lucius, not quite as tall as his son, had to tilt his head up to look at him. Speak about her that way. You do not tell me what to do, boy. I am head of this family, and you will treat me with the respect I deserve. You think you deserve my respect? Draco shouted, then shook his head. No, you lost the right to my respect when you let that psychopath into our home. Draco, enough! No, you know I am right, Mother. He ruined us. Narcissa wore a pained look, and Lucius looked as though he wanted to hit him. He keeps going on about me and my duty to this family. It was his duty to keep us safe. It was his duty to protect us. And then what did he do? He got himself locked up in Azkaban, and you and I had to fend for ourselves. How dare you! You were so blinded by your beliefs, Father, that you didn't even see what you were doing to your own family. No, you have not had my respect in a long time. Lucius appeared to grow in size a bit, inhaling deeply and puffing out his chest. He stepped even closer to Draco, so they were standing practically nose to nose, while Narcissa looked on worriedly. You are a Malfoy, Draco, Lucius hissed furiously. You may be upset with me, but that does not give you the excuse to behave like this. This is not who you are. This is not my son. Draco clenched his jaw. I'd like you to think very carefully about what you are going to say next. Your mother and I will only give you so much leeway. There is a line. Think before you cross it. He glanced sideways at Hermione, his body so still she wondered if he was even breathing. I've done all the thinking I need to, Father. I love Hermione, and nothing you say or do will change that. Lucius gave him a look of pure loathing. Then you are no son of mine. Narcissa made a miserable sound. She looked pleadingly at Draco, even whilst Lucius stormed away. I'm sorry, Mother, he said quietly. She inhaled shakily, stepping forward to cup his face in her hands. I love you, Draco. I always will, she whispered, and Draco looked almost hopeful for a second. But I cannot accept this. She released him and followed her husband out the door, leaving a terrible silence in her wake. Draco? Hermione said after a minute, apprehensive, and he turned to her, his eyes swimming with tears, his face scrunched up as though in pain. Oh, Draco. I just thought. His voice cracked, and it broke her heart. She hurriedly stood up to embrace him. I hoped that maybe my mother... He broke off, burying his face in her neck, a sob tearing from his throat. I'm so sorry, darling. I'm so sorry. It's not fair, he cried, clutching at her as though his life depended on it. It's not fair. I know, Draco. Hermione ran her fingers through his hair soothingly, trying not to cry herself, for this was not about her. I'm sorry. Promise you'll be here. Promise I'll have you always. I promise I'm not going anywhere, Draco. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. In the week that followed, Hermione and Draco spent the majority of their time secluded in her living quarters. He was in no mood to see anyone else, and the constant stream of letters and howlers they were receiving due to Rita Skeeter's latest articles certainly did not help. Thankfully, it was the final week of classes before the holidays, so they were soon freed of their responsibilities. On the first day of the holidays, Hermione spoke to Minerva about her and Draco's living arrangements. Upon her agreement, which she gave with a slight smirk, they moved Draco's belongings into Hermione's quarters with the help of Neville and Veronica. It was only once Draco began returning to himself that Hermione felt it was time to carry on with her many plans. One of the many positives of befriending a number of people who had been sorted into Slytherin House was that they provided a number of excellent schemes. Pansy, Theo, and Blaise visited Hogwarts that night with 3 bottles of wine from the Knot cellar and a whole host of ideas. Their usual group was joined by Veronica for 2 reasons. the first being that Hermione wanted her to spend some time with people who would understand her situation a little better. The second reason was she thought they might need a Hufflepuff to act as their moral compass. "That letter, the one from Brown, it said the Gryffindor Patil was sorry, yeah?" Blaise swirled the wine in his glass, watching as it threatened to spill. Hermione was grateful to Theo for placing an impervious charm on her new rug. "I think you should guilt her into doing another exposé, only this time she tells your story. Whether or not people believe it, they'll still want to read it. It'll place doubt in their minds, turn the tables a bit, you know." "I agree," said Theo, nodding. "Though you should probably speak to Brown about it first. Without her approval, Patil might not go for it." Yes. Those two are far too loyal to each other," said Pansy. "Always have been. Besides, if you win Brown's approval, maybe Patil can publish an interview with the both of you. Then it will be undeniable. Weasley will be painted as the traitor, a womanizer if you will. Though, personally, I doubt he has the looks for such a thing," she added, sneering. "I reckon you could just write your own article and blackmail Parvati into publishing it," said Veronica boldly. "You got any dirt on her?" Right, Hermione thought, wincing. So, not the best moral compass. She looked to Draco for his opinion on the matter. He frowned and thought for a moment. "The holiday rush is surely keeping the weasel busy at the moment," he said eventually. "That means he won't be home much over the next 2 days. Show up at the house unannounced. See what Brown's willing to do." Hermione grinned and leaned over to kiss him. "This is one of the many reasons why I love you," she murmured. Blaise made a gagging noise, and Pansy smacked him upside the head. "Oh, please," she said. "They can get much more sappy than this. You've seen nothing yet." "Hermione," said Veronica, suddenly bemused, "how come you can't just threaten Skeeter again?" "She's registered now. I haven't got anything on her." "You could always tell the press when she became an animagus." "That wouldn't work out too well for me," said Hermione, grimacing. "If I did that, she'd tell them I kept her in a jar for a month. Then we'd both do time in Azkaban." "You know, I think you've broken more laws than Theo, Blaise, and I combined," said Pansy thoughtfully. "Perhaps not Draco, though. He was technically an accessory to murder." "I thought we agreed not to bring that up any more," said Draco, to which she shrugged. "You make me sound like a criminal," said Hermione sullenly. "Well, you did rob a bank," said Theo pointedly. "That was for a good cause." "And you brewed an illegal potion in a school bathroom." "Again, for a good cause." "You permanently scarred Marietta Edgecombe." "Led Dolores Umbridge to a herd of centaurs," said Blaise most unhelpfully. "I hear she never fully recovered." "You broke into the Ministry of Magic." "Twice." "Harbored a fugitive." "Sirius was innocent." "She set Snape on fire once." Hermione glared at Draco as the others gaped at her. "What? You did?" "Hermione, you sneaky bitch!" Pansy exclaimed gleefully. "Honestly, people should be terrified of you," Theo said kindly. Blaise nodded solemnly. "Daphne is. Half the time she's too frightened to join us at Knott Manor because she thinks you'll hex her." "I don't see why you didn't just resort to blackmail," Veronica told Hermione, very nonchalantly. "You've done it before." "I will not be blackmailing Parvati." In the end, Hermione, unsurprisingly, did not go with Veronica's plan. She did, however, take the advice of the others and apparated to the town of Ottery St. Catchpole the following morning. It was frankly freezing outside, and she'd had an argument with Draco before leaving when he attempted to force a knitted hat on her head. If she was going to see Lavender again, she would not do so with hat hair. She slowly made her way to the outskirts of the small town and up the snowy hills that surrounded it, careful to take her time so that she would not be sweaty or out of breath when she arrived. She spotted the burrow in the distance and promptly looked the other way, a twinge in her chest. Luna's oddity of a house was nearby too, but it wasn't until she came within sight of the Potter home that she caught sight of the slightly smaller cottage on the edge of the nearby forest. It was fully decked out in brightly colored Christmas decorations, and there was a purple doormat on the front porch. Turning on the spot, Hermione apparated as close to the cottage as its surrounding wards would allow her. All of the lights were on, which she took as a good sign. The twinge in her chest came back in full force, however, when she saw the nursery on the second floor. Taking a deep breath to steady herself, she approached the front door, then took another deep breath as she knocked the snow off her boots on the doormat. "Okay," she muttered to herself. "You've got this. It's only Lavender." She raised a fist and rapped twice on the door. "Just a minute," she heard a voice call out from within the cottage. There was a loud whine, likely from Poppy, followed by a series of footsteps. The door opened to reveal Lavender Weasley, a small, red-headed infant in her arms, and another, slightly older red-headed child clinging to her leg. Lavender wore a lilac dressing gown with a floral apron on top and had a dish towel slung over her shoulder. Her hair was tied up in what must have been a bun at some point, but she was now a series of blonde knots. "Hello, Lavender," Hermione said pleasantly, offering a smile worthy of Gilderoy Lockhart. When Lavender only stared at her, she turned to the young girl at her feet, crouching down to get on her level. "You must be Rose. My, aren't you pretty?" Rose blushed, smiling bashfully. "My name is Hermione. I was a friend of your daddy's. It's a pleasure to meet you." "You know my daddy?" "Oh, yes, very well." "What's your name again?" asked Rose. "Hermione." "Hermione." "Exactly. I like your dress. Is pink your favorite color?" "Yes, I love it so much." "I love pink, too." "Really?" Lavender seemed to have finally regained the power of speech. "Hermione, what are you doing here?" Hermione glanced up at her, still smiling. "I thought we were due for a little chat," she said. "May I come in?"